Today, we're going to tackle one of the biggest questions out there. What does it actually mean to be human? And we're doing it through the lens of a book that sparked an absolute firestorm of debate, Steven Pinker's The Blank Slate. The whole thing really boils down to one single powerful question.
I mean, think about it. It's a question that philosophers and scientists have argued over for centuries, and I bet you've wondered about it too. Are we just a product of our experiences, or is there something already there when we're born? This is the battleground for all the ideas we're getting into today.
All right, so for a huge chunk of the 20th century, the intellectual world was really dominated by one particular view of human nature. This idea, known as the blank slate, wasn't just some theory. It was practically a foundational belief system.
Now, Pinker says the blank slate didn't stand alone. It was actually part of a trio of powerful ideas. First, you've got the blank slate itself, the notion that our minds are totally empty at birth. Then there's the noble savage, this idea that we're all born good and it's society that messes us up. And finally, the ghost in the machine, the belief that our mind, our self, is totally separate from our physical brain. Together, these three formed this powerful worldview that he was determined to take apart.
So into this well-established world of ideas steps Steven Pinker. Back in 2002, he drops a book with a seriously provocative subtitle, The Modern Denial of Human Nature. Whoa. He wasn't just proposing a new theory, he was basically accusing modern science and culture of ignoring a fundamental truth about ourselves.
And here it is. This book became an absolute lightning rod for debate. You just couldn't ignore it. It forced everyone to take a hard look at their deepest assumptions about who we are. So what exactly was the argument that caused such an uproar?
At the very heart of Pinker's book is this really powerful counter-idea. Instead of a blank slate, he says we come into the world with a kind of pre-installed software, what he calls evolved psychological traits. His big claim is that our brains and our minds are products of evolution, just like our hands or our hearts. And this inheritance deeply, deeply shapes our thoughts, our feelings, and our actions. And make no mistake, this was not some fringe idea from out of nowhere. The book's importance was recognized right away. I mean, being a finalist for the Pulitzer Prize, that tells you this wasn't just some academic squabble. This was a major public intellectual event.
Now, Pinker knew this was all going to be incredibly controversial, so he actually dedicated a huge part of the book to tackling what he called the four great fears, the things he believed were stopping people from accepting that biology plays a role in human nature. He was making the case that this debate isn't just about science, it's about our deep-seated political and moral anxieties.
So, what were they? Let's break them down. First, the fear of inequality. The worry that if we aren't blank slates, some people might be innately better than others. Then, the fear of imperfectibility. If bad traits are hardwired, can we ever really improve society? Third, the fear of determinism. If our brains call the shots, do we even have free will? And finally, the fear of nihilism. If we're just biological machines, does life even have a point?
Let's dive into the biggest one, inequality. The fear is pretty straightforward. If we're born different, maybe that justifies oppression. But Pinker's counterargument is really powerful. He says we've mixed up two totally different things, being biologically the same and being politically equal. He argues that our rights shouldn't be based on this idea that we're all identical clones, but on the principle that every single individual deserves dignity and justice, period.
Ultimately, Pinker's whole position was that these fears were all non sequiturs. It's a fancy term for a logical fallacy, where the scary conclusion just doesn't follow from the initial idea. He was saying that, hey, accepting that we have an evolved human nature doesn't automatically mean we're doomed to a world of inequality or meaninglessness. He wasn't just trying to win a science argument, he was trying to calm what he saw as a moral panic.
And then Pinker completely flipped the script. He claimed the real danger was in believing in the blank slate. He argued that if you think people are infinitely moldable, well, that can be used to justify totalitarian governments trying to re-engineer society. It can also lead to blaming the wrong people, like shaming parents for their child's innate personality, or thinking dangerous psychopaths can be easily fixed. For him, ignoring human nature isn't just a mistake, it has real and often tragic consequences.
As you can probably imagine, when this book came out, it set off an absolute intellectual bomb. The reactions weren't just mild disagreement, they were intensely polarized. We're talking everything from gushing praise to straight-up accusations of intellectual dishonesty. Let's look at the two extremes.
Just look at the difference here. It's night and day. On one side, you have people calling it a landmark achievement, a game changer, and on the other, critics are just dismissing it as flawed, misleading, even dishonest. You just don't see this kind of divide over a science book very often.
The praise was, well, profound. A quote like this coming from a respected psychologist like David Buss, that's not just a casual compliment. The people who loved the book saw it as this brave, necessary correction to decades of what they considered flawed thinking.
But on the flip side, the criticism was just as fierce. I mean, wow. Anthropologist Thomas Hyland Erickson didn't just disagree with Pinker's ideas, he attacked the book's integrity. And this was a common theme, accusing the book of dishonesty and a total lack of nuance. So the critics' main points really boiled down to a few things. A lot of them felt Pinker was attacking a straw man, a weak, exaggerated version of the blank slate view that nobody really believes in anymore. Others said he was cherry-picking evidence to fit his case. There was even a famous example where he seemed to misread a Virginia Woolf quote. To his critics, these weren't just small slip-ups, they pointed to a deeper problem with his whole argument.
So why are we still talking about this? Why didn't this whole debate just fizzle out after 2002? Well, it's because the questions Pinker raised are still so alive today. They touch on our deeply held political and social beliefs. The nature versus nurture debate is never, ever, just about nature and nurture.
And there's some research that helps explain why this is so sticky. One survey kind of confirmed what a lot of people already suspected, that there's a political angle to the science. It found that social scientists who leaned left were often way less open to using evolutionary biology in their work. It just goes to show how our worldviews can shape our science, and that keeps the controversy burning. And the result of all this? The debate is far from over. Here we are more than 15 years after the book was published, and commentators are pointing out that we're still bogged down in the exact same arguments Pinker was trying to settle. It just shows you how deeply this stuff is tied to our identity and our politics. This conversation is not ending anytime soon. Which brings us right back to the central question. If Pinker's right, if we aren't born as completely blank slates, then it forces us to ask another, even more profound question. What exactly is written on that slate when we're born, and what does that mean for who we are and who we have the potential to become? That's the question the blank slate really leaves us with, and it's one we are all still trying to answer.